Chapter 5. This is Crazy. The next day, as we worked on the project, after our regular job hours were fulfilled, I continued with my story. They wanted to know more as we worked. I only spoke about it when they asked me to. Did I say more about how I knew this technology was accessible? I sure did. Truth is truth, but only when they asked me to. This isn't a short story, and we had to stay busy, but it helped pass time when we worked, which sometimes became redundant. So as we wound copper wire into coils, which was boring, someone asked me to continue to tell them more about my Hayfork days, the town with the strange name. I didn't always do this, and the excuse was, I will when all of you are here to listen, but most time they were all there. John, our pilot, on this day was absent because of his job, which could take him days to return from shuffling people from city to city. I continued this time anyway. Well, all I can tell you is, after seeing that display of unidentified objects, I thought the odds of anything else happening there would be slim to none, but once again I was proved wrong. The next thing I found out about was how haunted the hotel was by witnessing two strange events there as I lived and worked there. One was a smoky figure traveling down the hall, and another occurrence what I heard was a big party down in the ballroom early in the morning, which was extremely odd. When I went downstairs that morning for coffee, I asked Mickey what was going on in the ballroom with all the old-time music and hoopla. She looked at me funny and said nothing was happening in the ballroom. There was no aerobics class this morning, and it had been quiet all morning. You know, the exercise class doesn't start till this afternoon on Thursdays, she reiterated. She stated this quite assuredly as she looked at me a bit puzzled, since I knew this. I didn't believe her. I knew what I heard, and asked to take a look in the back. And when I did, I found it was empty and dark. As I walked back to the front bar, she said, I told you so. All I could say was, you were right, that was weird, and she let it go at that. Nothing else was said. I let it go thinking that there must be an explanation, even though I had not found one. It wasn't until years later that I did actually have some proof. It wasn't until I re-examined an old photo of me painting the hotel that Rachel took that had some evidence in it, and guess what? Not only are there strange anomalies in that photo, but I bought a postcard from a store in town, and anomalies are in that picture too. The postcard is black and white and from 1982. It had orbs in it, but mine had faces in the windows. I brought my photos and showed them to the crew. What you'll see is two figures in the second from the left upper window. One is of an old-time miner 49 type, with the typical mustache of those days and a prominent chin that you would expect, and an Indian girl with pigtails peeking around a corner from around a doorway in the hallway, both looking in the same direction. The hallway connects and ends at the last room, which is the first window on the left. The far window to the right has a person in Mickey's bed. No one was up there. Everyone that lived there was working. Everything was locked up and no one else had access. At this point, I have to wonder about this town and areas surrounding it. Why all the activity? Claude, Mickey, and I were the only ones that had access to those rooms, and we were the only ones staying in the hotel at that time. He didn't rent the vacant rooms to anyone at this time. You needed to have a key just to get upstairs. For a while I thought I was crazy, but here's some proof, and you will see orbs in that black and white postcard too. John's girlfriend, Amy, asked, "Aren't orbs just dust reflections?" "Sure," I said, "most of them are dust particles, but not all of them. So I feel there is something that takes that shape and manifests into our reality from time to time as an orb shape. And I'm sure some are real. I have seen one pass through my house once in Florida, a red one that also went through my television set and destroyed it. What looks to be a big orb in my photo on the upper left side where I'm painting is a scratch. The rest are the real thing. You'll see more in the right-hand window. There's a skeletal figure laying down in what is Mickey's bed. Remember, there's no one upstairs. This town, place, has more going on in it than I could have ever imagined or seen before anywhere. One of the odd things about this town is most people that live there seem to have a very similar belief about this place. So what Mickey says is true, and that is, most people know about the weirdness here and accept it. What you might be thinking to yourself, I said to myself also, and I wanted to believe that it was all my imagination, but that's not true. Then I bought this postcard from a local store that I never sent. I never looked at these pictures closely till years later. So just after that color photo was taken in late 1983, I looked at this picture postcard and bought it and found these anomalies from 1982. I never sent it, and it remained buried with all my other photos for years. The man walking with his mother in the black and white photo is a Native American Hupa Indian. He was a major drinker. Certain times of the month, when Claude did rent rooms back then, he stayed there to recover. His mother wasn't like him. She never drank like he did. She was very social and forgiving, and I loved talking to her. She was the daughter of the only survivor of an Indian massacre that happened up there during the gold rush era. Her mother was an infant when discovered and saved. She named me Motorcycle Mike. The son had a quirk. He would sneak up on you, push you on the shoulder from behind to get your attention. He had passed a few years before 1994. During the winter of 1994, I went there on vacation. Claude had me sleep in a room that he rented from time to time when they were being rented. It was the one he liked and always stayed in. As I started to fall asleep in that room, I was pushed, just like in the past, on the shoulder by some invisible hand from behind and almost fell off the mattress. It was startling, and I had to take a look in the room to see if someone was there, but there was nothing. I had dismissed all the other evidence I had seen there before at that time, but now I would have to seriously reconsider what I believed. This incident is what caused me to look at my old photos for any other proof. He's not the only one staying there, is what I found. So I now have to say definitely that the hotel is haunted. A girlfriend of mine, Donna, who had never been to California, returned to Hayfork with me on a vacation. A few years later, she didn't believe the stories I told her of that town, that place, till she actually seen it for herself. I went there to mine, and the picture is at the digs and the area of her occurrence. One day, when Donna went to use the bathroom facilities, she came running back and related what she had experienced. Which was a cavalry-type horseman riding up on her as she was squatting and stopping abruptly with all the noise associated from a horse stopping quickly, and he had a saber flashing in the daylight. She sensed that as she witnessed this, he also witnessed her in the prone position. Then she said, all I could do was to stand up abruptly, then it all suddenly vanished. It took her days to relax again. So at this point, she started to believe some of my stories and theories about this place. She now seen it finally for herself as different and special. She finally believed all that I had witnessed could be a possibility. Later, there was more that she seen, but I won't get into all that right now. If it was deception, to me that also proves there is more going on behind the scenes than we know or can see, at least some of the time. When it happens to you, seeing something unusual, and I know, till you do, you will remain skeptical. But that doesn't matter to me. I know now this is a spiritual world in many ways. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic a little, but my crew didn't care. They wanted to hear more, and so I continued. To me, there seems to be a couple things going on here. One is there are spirits that are damned or trapped here. Two is there are windows opening up for us some reason to the past and the future simultaneously for some unknown or could be geologic in nature. Who knows? Maybe that's what we are seeing from time to time. I don't have all the answers. I just know what I have witnessed, and to me it was all real and in this reality. Or three, possibly there is nothing that is paranormal that can't manifest itself in this region by some unknown natural means. But what is natural? Or none of it is real or paranormal, and that it's all imagination, a trick of the mind. But that possibility in this case doesn't make any real sense, now does it? After all, we are going to prove a form of physics, in this case, came from what may not be a phenomenon at all. The history of Hayfork had lots of trauma involved in its beginnings. I know that the native Indians were chased up to Hayfork from Weaverville, and that they eventually were chased to the natural bridge area outside of Hayfork, where all the natives but one baby was massacred. At this point, the business of the day came up. We talked about what was to be done next. As we worked on our craft, our subject of conversation switched back and forth many times about what we worked on that day. We decided on windowless containment for the ship with cameras that would give us a 360-degree view on top and bottom in any direction we wanted to view. We had to think about thrusters for positioning for a maneuver when and if we needed to see something or correct our trajectory while stationary or in a stationary orbit. All these things had to be engineered, and the craft had to be able to be pressurized. We built a false bottom where we could mount landing gear into the body so that they could retract into its body. We made pads for it with stabilizing shockers so it could stand very stable in any terrain or slope to a certain degree. Everything had to be recessed into the body, which was about 35 feet high and about 14 feet wide. The main body was made from plate steel about 1/8 of an inch thick. Someone asked, "What happened after that sighting?" I started again. So back to those times. After witnessing that huge square-shaped and round object, about 2 weeks go by and I'm painting my ass off. It started to be fun, and one day it dawns on me that I have to go back to get the rest of my stuff and still clean up my camp. I'm a little apprehensive after that first sighting, but I thought, what the heck? I talked myself into it by thinking about it logically. There's no way that that's going to ever happen again. Really, what are the odds of 2 sightings within 2 weeks? Nil. It's the animals I have to worry about. So I put on my backpack, fired up my bike, and I go up that hill. And this will probably be the last time I go there for a while. Winter's coming. It's a nice ride, and the country is spectacular to look at. The colors of fall were breathtaking, and somehow all this made you feel alive with a sense of well-being. There was more of a crisp, cold chill in the air now. Every now and then there were real short bursts of light, cold rain. It was exhilarating, and I thought I needed to get everything on this trip. I arrived there and parked my bike, walked into where my camp was, dismantled my tent. I loaded up my backpack, and now it was an awkward load when I got on my bike. I would have to return one more time in the next day or two for a 5-gallon bucket and things like my shovel, and to take out all the signs of my occupation. I still couldn't take it all. This time, I once again chose to go early in the evening. I walk out of my campsite back to where the bike was, and as I left, I proceeded up the dirt path of a worn-down road caused by nature and slight water erosion. It was pretty well hidden and overgrown also. I couldn't help thinking about it, how it was twilight now, but there was nothing unusual that I could sense, which gave me a feeling of security somehow. I felt relieved, but I still had thoughts popping up in my mind about the last time I was there. I again kept reassuring myself that the odds of seeing something like that again was so high against it as to be astronomical, and that there would be no way I would witness something like that again, even in 100 years. No way. But again, about 8 miles along, I found I was wrong. I get tired of being wrong. It was after cresting the mountain and heading down at the top of Tule Creek Gulch, that 12-mile ride downhill, that I noticed that there were lights below on the ground, where the head of Tule Creek comes out of the mountain, and again, I had to wonder. I had to stop to see what was down there. Lights? This again? What the hell? These were not there before. I walked this road more than 10 times now, and there was no habitation there. There wasn't a road down there. I'm on guard now and noticing anything that catches my eye, because it was too easy to do in the dark countryside. It wasn't even a quarter mile from the summit, and I noticed right off an inexplicable scene unfolding before my eyes. There's nothing down there but forest and the headwaters for Tule Creek coming out of the sheer wall of that summit. So now several things came to mind to explain it. First, there must be houses down there that I never noticed before, As I thought this, I see movement of the lights that were around the starfish-shaped object. That's no house. It was what I knew to be true at this point. I had stopped here before to look down at the steepness of the edge of the road here, and I think I even took a picture of it. Matter of fact, I know I did. I thought, well, it's the lumber company or lumberjacks, and they are taking wood out of the forest. The only problem with that theory was that they do not work at night. The object on the ground was huge, with many lights all around it. Lights that all seemed to be examining and roaming around larger objects, as if they were examining everything nearby that was in nature. The large object's thickness and shape reminded me of a giant starfish, five-sided and alive in a way. I had a perfect view from my vantage point as I was on the road and looking straight down. It was at least 1,000 feet down the side of the hill. The little light clusters of twos, threes, fours all seemed to be separate units or machines that had different tasks, and it seemed to me they were examining trees and everything in the surroundings of the larger star-shaped object. It was as if they had never seen anything like the woods before. They looked kind of frenzied in their observations of our nature, or they were in a hurry. My mind went through just about every explanation that I could think of for what I was witnessing at this time, and I couldn't come up with anything to compare that scene except a sci-fi movie. What kept popping up in my mind was I was looking at interdimensional travelers, or else, by the size of this, those who watch the skies, would have spotted this in our airspace. It could be they are opening windows to get here. I thought it's the only reason why the Air Force isn't all over the place. I needed another witness. I glanced around, but I was alone. It wasn't long till I heard something running up the hill in my direction. I thought, how could that be? It's not possible. A human could climb up the side of that terrain, but it would be slow going. You would need ropes and gear. What I heard told me that something was running up that steep grade. There were two of them. Whatever they are moving fast. What could move that fast here? They were huge and in a hurry. One was to my left and one was to my right, both heading toward the road and me. They were crashing their way up the hill. This sounded familiar, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up once again. I suspected that they were running from what was below them. Behind me was a steep mountainside. There would be no retreat that way. My mind raced as I thought about what to do. Then the more I panicked, I assumed these had to be bears because of the amount of noise. They were constantly dislodging loose rocks as they approached, and the rubble was repeatedly crashing downhill, making more noise through the brush as they hit tree trunks, like drums being beat out of time. They sounded like they were huge, and the only creature I had seen climbing a slope that steep that quickly are black bears. So I'm going to be sandwiched between two bears running scared from whatever it was down in that valley. Time ticks slowly now. What was it running uphill in my direction? I thought soon I would be trapped between two scared black bears. I had to get away. My intuition was telling me I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see, and whatever was coming at me was dangerous. I remember during this event riding around with Carl one evening and seeing a bear do this exact same thing. When we surprised it with headlights coming around a corner of the road, it ran up an 80% slope for about 200 feet straight up and disappeared over the top in seconds. Right, Carl? He answered. I remember that evening. So I contemplated my demise as the event continued. I started to panic. I tried to start my bike, and it would not fire up. I'm too close to the object, I thought, and just as others had witnessed, I was experiencing a shutdown of the motor's electrical system from their close proximity. I was realizing the same thing was happening here. I only had one way out of this, and it was gravity. I turned the key on and let it roll down using the slope of the road and tried to jump start it after a few feet. It would not start. I would have to wait for it to pick up speed again, and in the pitch black darkness, I could not really tell where the edge of the road was. All I could do was guess and hope I didn't run off the road because it was a long way down. It was right before my second attempt that the first creature made it onto the road. The second creature was behind me somewhere in the dark now also. All I had to do was get past this one. But the night was really dark and you could not see clearly ahead without a headlight. This was an extremely dangerous stretch of road with 1,000-foot drop-offs. I knew it was there somewhere in front of me. I could sense it on the road. I let out the clutch again and nothing. I kept losing my momentum when I did this. I kept going down to a crawl for a few moments, waiting, then slowly when the momentum of gravity helped pick up speed again, I could try again. Time slowed down, and about this time the creature ran right by me, missing me only by an inch or two. I could feel the heat coming off its body. It was that close as it passed by me on my left side. I was right, it was huge. I knew the other one was behind me, and the one you can't see is the dangerous one. So I let the clutch out again. I gained enough momentum and it started up. Thank God, I thought. I have no idea how I stayed away from the edge of the road because it was that dark. Somehow I was pretty lucky or blessed that I did manage to stay on the road, put distance between me and whatever was there in the dark. Since I had the bike running, I decided to turn around and see what those creatures were. I figured I could get close enough with the headlight on high beam, and if I had to, I could pull a U-turn and outrun them, or so that was my plan. A few seconds later, I seen them, and now I was amazed at what these creatures were. Range cattle. They were steers, about 1,200 or more pounds each, standing on the road with their eyes bulging, with lots of the whites showing as if bewildered and frightened, soaking wet now with perspiration. The next thing that raced through my mind was, how in the world could they have run up that steep slope that fast? And then the next thing I thought was that they must have been really frightened by what was down there, and why. So now the question was, what had made them do that, and why were they so frightened? The whole incident was strange and funny at the same time. So I decided to go back to the spot where I had been watching that weird object. But now there were no lights, no sound, nothing but darkness, with no sign of anything wrong or strange. I must have, in my hurry to escape the impending dangers, missed the object's departure from the area. if they did depart, or did they simply black their lights out? It was at this point the hair on the back of my neck stood up again, and I knew better than to stick around alone, so I headed home. What was striking to me was I had two major sightings within a few miles of each other and 2 weeks apart. Very strange. What made me feel better was whatever it was I was witnessing, hearing, and sensing, the animals in the area also sensed and ran from it. Did they sense its intentions? Well, the odds of the same thing happening again just got blown out of the water. The next 4 years or so I spent up there were uneventful as far as sightings go, and I didn't see much more after those events during this time frame till I went back there on vacation with Donna Patrick, the girlfriend I told you about before. That next summer I started my mining experience. I learned how to mine by the book and how to pan, but Carl had shown me the panning techniques and a few other tricks. Isn't that right, Carl? Yes, it is. And why am I here today? I have also witnessed some of these things there too, especially the technology. Eventually, I learned to douse for gold that following winter by an old-timer I met up there. His dad was a 49er. I then taught Carl something new about mining. That's right, Carl stated. And now, to the heart of what we have here and how I based it into a theory. What I discovered about dowsing is that it works. I never miss the good spots or traps by using that method, and always hit whatever the ground had to offer. And believe me, it's scattered about, and there is lots of ground not holding any gold. You could go broke easily just using book knowledge. What is known in the books is good base and common sense, but it doesn't mean it's always there. Book knowledge is a good base to start with when you get on good ground, but the question is, where does it hold gold? It may look good and the books may say it's there, but that doesn't mean it's there. And without an edge, you risk going broke trying to find it most of the time. Some guys use a metal detector, but that is limited in depth of the ground. And I couldn't afford ground penetrating radar equipment back then either. So this was the next best way, so why not? The method is also a key to this whole technology. Believe me, dowsing, had to be proven to me too. And the way that happened was with the gold I found. That was enough proof for me. Tim Pogue's information enabled us to immediately pick back up on the trails and the lines of gold so we could avoid moving ground with nothing in it. What I learned from that point on from this ancient knowledge and technique is that why we're here today. What makes dowsing work makes this project work and possible. Next, Chapter 6.